Alright, so I promised some, tips, I guess, about going over a little bit better lighting setup. And for fun, I did save this file in case Maya crashes, as it's known to do. Um, so, like I said, I'm just going to sort of start with the physical sky, and kind of go from there. So let's also, oh wait, I already added a physical sky, my bad. Um, let's pop up the render window and just see what we have really quick. So right now, I mean, I look at this, and I question why it's rendering from the wrong camera. There we go. I don't know. Apparently just switching it and then refreshing it back has got it. So I added this little render cam, so this is just the one I'm going to render from. So there's a few things that I would like in this image. I would definitely like some more shadows between the object and the ground, and also using shadow to sort of pop the object off the background, as well as if you scroll in, I mean, this is noisier and samplier than it probably should be. So I'll show you guys also how to fix that. So the first thing that I want to do is just go into my Skydome Light. I'm going to leave this just sort of chilling in the corner and rendering. I'll also use this little like render partial thing, so it doesn't need to render like the whole background. I'm just interested in the lighting on the shoe, really. So that's what I'm going to focus on for this. Ooh, the lag. Okay, I'm gonna might actually pause that real quick. So I'm gonna go into my Skydome Light. If you again, and this is a physical sky, so it has like this little separate thing mapped into color. If you go into that, I'm gonna see what happens if I mess with the like azimuth or sort of rotation. You can see it's also changing the color temperature, but like change the rotation of the color on the shoe. Sorry, what am I saying? All right, and just to see what kind of shadows I kind of like on this by default. And I think I don't really have any plans for this. I think I might actually try to sort of like low-key backlight this. Oof. What the? My computer's lagging so hard, it like doesn't know what it's doing. So I'm going to try to low-key backlight this, and I'll show you some lighting that you can use for like highlighting the front of the shoe. Come on. Dang it, I kind of like that as a render, and now it's going to be not a thing. Anyway, let's pause this and see if that helps the lag anymore. Need to like optimize my computer better. Okay, cool. I'm just gonna, wherever that is where I'm gonna leave it. So one thing we'll notice is that if we look at the background, now we have this like really aggressive shadow in the background, which I'm not a huge fan of. So the easiest fix for that is to just make sure that either the walls are shorter or they're farther away. So I'm just gonna scale this very aggressively until, okay, I'm gonna go in and just do the values like this. So I'm gonna, why, hello, question mark. It's for some reason cutting off part of my shoe, which is weird. So I'm just gonna slowly move this down until it's not cutting off my shoe. And then, theoretically, if we render, the walls will be far enough where it's not casting that like weird shadow in the background. So that's the first thing I'm going to do. I'll show you some other lights, and then I'll show you again how to go through and like mess with the sampling and take care of some of that, because there's a few different things you can kind of do for it. But it really depends on the circumstances of what you're trying to render. So there's different types of lights in Arnold. We've looked at, again, the Skydome Light and the physical skies for now. Light portals, basically, if you have either a physical sky or a skydome, it just, anywhere you put a light portal in, it'll automatically hook up to those lights and basically only shine light in from where you put the light portal. So it's really good for stuff like windows. I actually have a separate video on that. But if you are doing like an indoor scene and it's like hella grainy, and you don't have a portal light, try putting a portal light by your window. I almost guarantee you it will speed up your renders and make them less noisy. So there's a mesh light. Mesh lights, what they do is actually make the object itself glow. So glowing shoelaces, what the heck? So if we take the shoelaces, we go to lights and then mesh light, you'll see that it's temporarily like hidden the geometry of the shoe. And if we render this, it also looks kind of crazy. Sometimes if you put in mesh lights, you need to like close and reopen your render window, or it like doesn't super work well. But also you should be able, like under this shoe, if you click on this mesh light, there's some more options for it. So one thing I usually like doing is just setting the exposure up really high and just seeing like You can see now it's like casting a little bit of light, but we still don't see the laces themselves. So there's a few, like basically this tick box for light visible. You can turn that on and then it will show the actual lit up shoelaces themselves. So I'm just going to make these some weird color like this. I've given up on realism at this point for these shoes, I think. Ooh, heck yes. Neon shoelaces. So that's mesh lights. You can do some weird stuff with that. I think that's actually really funny, so I'm in fact going to leave them like this. Do be aware that mesh lights are sometimes a little bit finicky and also sometimes will require you know, smoothing geometry, and they also usually take a lot longer to render. So I am actually going to maybe set this back down to like 7 and call that a day. I like 10 though, that was fun. So that's mesh lights. You probably won't need them for like a hot minute, but I just want you to know that they're there. And then one of the sort of most common lights that I use for things is an area light, which basically functions as like a goofy little camera kind of thing. So I'm going to make sure I'm in my perspective camera. So this is an area light in Arnold, and basically it will give you like a little, this little like stick thing coming off of it is basically telling you which direction the light is pointing. So if we go ahead and we just go ahead and like, you know, start the render again, either one of two things is happening. Either I need to close and reopen the render view for this to show up, or I need to turn up the brightness on my light. So usually by default, I go insane, and I'm just like, let's set exposure to 50, like a crazy person. Oh look, then you see the light. So that's my favorite really goofy way, just to like get the light visible in the scene and like figure out, you know, where that light is shining, and then from there you can kind of like take it down. And you can see, like, obviously now there is a light there and it's like doing things. So a quick note on the difference between intensity and exposure. So intensity increases linearly. So if you set your intensity from 1 to 2, it doubles in intensity. If you set your intensity to 10, it's basically 10 times as bright as it was at value of 1. Whereas in exposure, exposure increases exponentially. And for some reason, I actually kind of forget how exponentially works in a way to explain it. But basically, like if you set your light from like 10, it's like, it's not 10 times brighter than it was at 1. It's like 2 is twice as bright as 1. 3 is like, where it's, I don't know. For some reason, I don't know. Exponential things. Basically, I usually at this point use exposure because you don't need to set the number up as high. Terrible description that was. You don't need to set the numbers up as high, and it's also more accurate to like how real world light behaves. So if you're trying to recreate, you know, a particular like lighting setup or whatever, you can, if you have like actual studio lighting and you know what the exposure on things was, you can actually just plug those in and recreate it closer. Intensity, it's also not uncommon to have to set your values up to like 10,000 or something. And I'm like, that's just a lot of numbers that I just don't care about dealing with. So that was a very janky explanation of exposure. But the other thing that I want to, but like I said, they do the exact same thing. They just have different number values for what you plug in to get the same level of brightness from intensity versus exposure. But they do exactly the same thing. You can use both at the same time. It doesn't really matter. So one cool thing I do want to show you guys about lights is that, I mean, for one, area lights leave these gross sort of hard lines, so try to avoid that. But you can, if you go to panels and look through selected, while you have that light selected, you can actually basically treat your light like a camera. And anytime you move the light, or like move your camera view basically, it's going to change the direction of that light. So it's a really absurdly convenient way to like figure out what you're looking at, and also just kind of go through and, you know, manipulate the light in a way that's a little bit easier than like rotating it, moving it, rotating it, moving it. Oops, like I, you know, having to go back and kind of like redo that over and over. So I'm going to go ahead and just sort of take this exposure down a bit, and I'm just going to set up a light in the front. Actually, let's go over 3-point light setup. What the heck? Alright, so basic 3-point light setup is usually you're going to have what's called a key light in the front, and that's going to do the main illumination of your shoe. And then you'll have a sort of fill light in case you have like crazy dark shadows. And then you'll have a rim light which kind of lights things from behind. So I'm going to temporarily turn off this Skydome Light just by hiding it in my outliner. if Maya doesn't lag. Oh lord. Arg. It's gonna crash again, I can feel it. I can feel it! If it crashes, I'm just gonna put the other 3-point light video I have in the playlist. Okay, here we go. It's hidden. Hooray! Okay. Excellent. So this is basically now my key light is this little light in the front, and I turned off the other light so it was easier to see exactly what we were really doing to this lighting setup. So I'm gonna say something like that is like kind of decent. I'm gonna go ahead and label this key light. Okay. Apparently I've been forcibly logged off of the Discord. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and duplicate the key light, and then I'm going to call this fill light. So the fill light, like I said, is the one that is just going to cut like the harsh shadows that you might have like inside the shoe. And it really, like where you put it, again, really depends on the object that you are modeling. And usually this isn't quite as bright as the key light. So what I'm going to do is just kind of take down that exposure a little bit. And I like the fill light actually in this case. It's doing kind of a nice thing where it's like highlighting. It's giving you like really defined sort of areas in the shoe. And just for fun, I'm going to make this green so that it's really obvious like where the fill light is versus the key light versus I'm going to throw in a little rim light in a second that's going to make things like real trippy. Alright, so that's the fill light, and then I'm going to add a rim light. And every time I duplicate this, I'm just redoing the panels look through selected, so I'm not moving the old cameras. And I'm going to make this light blue, and I'm going to make this light like super crazy, ridiculous, intense. And basically, usually the goal with a rim light is to just sort of come through the background of the shoe and just get like a little bit of light, like a little ring of light on the background to kind of like pop it off of the blue is actually not a good color to use for this. Okay, so you can see the yellow. It's just like giving a little bit of highlight, so it's like pulling the back of the shoe sort of off of the darker background. And that's one thing rim lights are like super nice for. Try and like avoid getting this really intense lighting on the ground. But for now, I think I'm not going to worry too much about that. I'm just going to say like, cool, that's probably halfway decent, I guess, as a rim light. Maybe it's kind of overexposed. I don't know. So really, the placement of the lights and stuff really depends on, you know, the object that you guys are doing. You will also notice that this mesh light is not really responding to the lighting. Like, they don't really take shadows. So if we were to theoretically... Alright, so yeah, if we delete that mesh light, it'll bring back our normal shoelaces, and then you have a little bit, I guess, better idea of like what the actual lighting setup on the shoe looks like without the crazy mesh lights and stuff. So that's, I mean, a pretty basic 3-point light setup. The only other thing, and that's usually what I do, I usually don't put HDRIs on my stuff, but that's just personal preference. It really depends on what you guys like doing. I just really like crazy stylized lighting. So again, if you're doing this for an assignment, like anything really works. If you want to do an HDRI, if you want to do, you know, a physical sky, if you want to set up something custom, or do some kind of mix, anything is really fine for me. I'm going to go through and just kind of like tweak this a little bit, just for fun, and then so if you want to stick around for that, cool. If not, I might do another video about possibly adding some texturing and stuff in here, just like some really basic stuff, to make this a little bit more interesting. And if you're not interested in me finishing the lighting, you just skip on to that or whatever the next video is. Alright, so I like weird color lighting. So I'm going to start with maybe like a light orange. I know people do like orange and blue a lot. It's like a big, like, weird thing that people do. But I think the fun thing about different colored lighting is like it's kind of just like an interesting way to like show off the object in a slightly different way. And for some reason I really like these like crazy saturated blue lights. Which I feel like it was really obvious when I was in school, like, whenever I would turn something in, they're like, yep, that's Allison's lighting, because it looks crazy, and it's 80 colors. So I think I'm actually going to move my key light, because I don't like, the entire back of the shoe is, like, not, like, the whole front is just, like, solid, boring orange, and then the whole back is just, like, weird colors. It's hard to see. Alright, Let's see. That's sort of not really better, question mark. Alright, I think I'm going to try something completely different with this, and maybe just move my fill light to the front. Great. I'm really bad at product photography, in case that wasn't inherently obvious. Fill light. So I'm going to try and move my fill light to like the back of the shoe. Alright, I kind of like that better, I think, maybe. Question mark. Then I think I'm actually gonna put 2 fill lights just because I want that blue wrapping around. So I mean, you're always obviously welcome to modify the 3-point light setup to suit whatever weird needs. Yes, I like this better. I'm not gonna say that this is great, but it's certainly less flat seeming than the original one. And then I'm gonna move that rim light a little bit. I really like panels if they're selected. It is my favorite thing. Favorite thing ever. Alright, so that's a shoe. I feel like this is a little bit washed out, but anywho. I'm just gonna kind of run with this for now, I think. Maybe we'll put this light over here. That's kind of fun. I kind of like that. It's not totally catastrophic. Sort of. Anyway, so I think I'm gonna call this pretty much good with the lighting. Ow! One weird supplemental thing that I want to show you guys really quick, which I will go over in later weeks, but it's basically light linking. So I really hate this giant green shadow on the floor. It looks really gross. So what I'm going to do, if you go into Windows, Relationship Editors, and Light Linking, either of these, they do the exact same thing. But basically you can go in and grab your rim light and just deselect the floor, and it will not render that light on the floor. So it is really handy for like turning off really bright shadows. It's not a bad idea to go in and like add a little bit more, like add a secondary light that doesn't affect the shoe but affects the floor, so that you don't have this weird green light that's mysteriously not affecting things. But anywho, so that's basically the lighting. I'm gonna go over some other stuff again with a little bit of texturing in I think the next video.